Good afternoon everybody, hope you're all keeping well. As you've hopefully seen, this week I've sent over a bunch of stuff to get your bike up to scratch and rideable. And seeing as my bike is currently not rideable, I thought I'd go through the process with you and show you what to do for maintaining and getting your bike up to scratch. So the first thing we're going to do is what's called the M check, and that means going either back to front or front to back in an M shape up your bike. So going from here, 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 checking everything and making sure it all works. So to do all these checks, it's good to get the equipment that you may need all ready and waiting for you. So here I have some WD-40, other lubricants are available, but this is the classic lubricant for oiling your bike. I've got a nice set of spanners and hex wrenches here that can be useful for a whole number of things. You'll see in a bit. Also, if none of them are useful, then I have some pliers here just in case. I have a checklist of what needs to be checked, and I have some pumps for my tyres. So let's get to checking. So the first part of the M is going to be our back wheel, and we're going to check the gears first. So they are in working condition. I'll show you in a minute that they do turn, but it's good practice to just take a bit of the WD-40 and give into the gears a little bit of a spray just to keep it all nice and lubricated. I also put a little bit around this side so the wheel keeps turning nice and smoothly. If it's okay, very occasionally I also do a little bit down in the gears where the chain is, just to keep it all running nice and smoothly. And a good thing to do just after you've lubricated everything in the back wheel is just to lift up the back wheel slightly and give it a turn. And there's no grinding or any weird sounds or clicking or anything that I can hear, so I know that that's fairly well lubricated. Right, on to the next bit. So the next bit I'm going to check is the tyre, and seeing as I haven't ridden my bike for over a year now, I'm not expecting good things for when I do this. No, as you can see, the tyre is very deflated and it's going to need a bit of a top up. What is promising though is that it is still a little bit deflated, so I don't think there's going to be a puncture in that one. I think it just needs a top up. So I'm going to take my pump, which I prefer to use this foot pump here. You can also use a hand pump like this, which works very similarly, just with slightly different parts. Uses a bit like that screws into there. This uses a little clip that clips onto the thing. So let's find our little cap, which is around there. To make it easy for myself, I'm just going to move the wheel around carefully. So the cap's here. All very simple. Unscrew that. Plug that in, and if you may have heard a little hiss there, that means that there is some pressure still in there, which is promising. Doesn't sound like there's a puncture. And then just pump. Keep pumping. Just keep checking. That's looking pretty good. Just a little bit more. And there we go, nice and stiff, but still a bit of play. So I'll just take that off. There'll be a little bit of hiss. Don't worry, you won't lose too much air. Now you find the cap that you forgot to look after before. Yeah, it's better to keep that in your pocket or something rather than letting it fly. But there we go. Put that back on. And that's the tyre. So the next bit, as we move up our M, is the seat. So most of you, the seat will probably be fine. It'll be in about the right place and it won't be moving around. For me, there's a bit of a wobble. So what I need to do is find out where the wobble's coming from, which is that pivot there, and find the tools to fix it. So what I need for that is a spanner. So I need the hexagon shaped hole in a tool to tighten that up. Now, having looked at this previously, I know that none of my spanners, despite having a plethora of spanners here, none of them fit that screw, which is really annoying. So I'm going to use my wrench here. I'm just going to go over here and tighten it up. So Let's get that on there, and ooh, that's being stiff. If a screw is being stiff like that, something that we already have is going to help. I'm going to put a bit of WD-40 on that and come back later, or in a few minutes, and see if it'll move a bit. So, just a little spray to help get rid of rust, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So, the next thing to do with the seat is going to be the height of the seat. So, to check what height you need, basically, you need to get on your bike and see if you're just off your flat feet. Not sure if you can see that there, but just on your toes when you're sitting on the seat at a stopping point. So let's get on here, and I'll just roll back a bit. You can see my feet aren't flat on the ground like that when I'm on the seat. When I'm on the seat, they're slightly off the ground like that, but I've got my toes there, and that gives you the best position to cycle from. So I'm going to say my seat needs no adjustment up or down, and move on to the next bit. The next bit, moving down RM, is all the bits in the middle of your bike. Now this often gets forgotten about, but sometimes things like these screws can come loose, and if that does, then in this case my lock would fall out and I'd have nothing to secure my bike with. So make sure all of these are tight. As it happens, this one is tight and it's rusted, so it's not going to move anywhere at the moment. So that's all good, but make sure all the screws are tight for your water bottles and locks. You'll often have things down here rather than up here, but make sure they're all tight, all the ones around here, and that's good. So the next bit after that is going to be the pedals. This is very similar to the gears at the back. They probably just need a bit of greasing. If your pedals themselves are any more wobbly than just that, then you might need to look at some new pedals. So they should be able to turn, but they shouldn't be able to kind of wobble up and down if you do that, or if you do that, or move back and forth like that. So let's get WD-40 and let's give a bit of a spray on the chain there, a bit of a spray on the pivot bit of the pedals to make it run smoothly. You probably don't need to, but you can give a tiny little spray on the pedals themselves just to make sure they're not gumming up, and that's good. So as we move on to our fourth part of the M, we're now going up to the handlebars. So there's several things to talk about here. There's both sets of brakes. So there's the front and the wheel and the rear brakes. There's the general kind of joint there, that could be squeaking. And there's also things like just a bit of general maintenance here that could be cleaned up a little bit. So firstly, I will say, just to check, if you have things like a bell, check they're working. This one is a bit dull. Oh, there we go. But all it did was a bit of moving around. There's probably a bit of spider's web or something inside, and now it's fine again. Little things like that. The next thing, all this rust, most of it probably is going to stay there forever now, but what we can do is come back to our magic WD-40. I'm going to give it a little bit of spray. I'm going to leave it on there for now, and then I'll come back with an old J-cloth or something similar and wipe some of it off and get some of that rust off. While we have the WD-40, you can also give a little bit of a squirt to that column there where the handlebars meet the frame. Make sure that's all nice and not squeaking. Sometimes you may have some squeaking here as well, but that's rare and depends on the bike that you have. And again, make sure all the screws, if you have a torch mount like this one, make sure they're all tightened up nicely. Right, so the next thing I'm going to check is how well the brakes are working. So we have our front brakes on the right hand side of the handlebars, our rear brakes on the left hand side. To check them, I'm just going to walk forward slowly and then use the brakes. If it stops the bike, then they're working. If it's a bit squeaky or if it doesn't work at all, then there may be some issues that I'll show you about in a minute. So front brakes first, I'll just move forward, and that's very good. I even got a bit of a lift at the back. and then move back. So rear brakes now, left hand side, move forward. Very good. So it didn't stop the bike moving, but it did stop the back wheel entirely. So if you're worried about the grip of the back, then in my case it would be about the tyres rather than the brakes. The brakes are working fine. So we've checked that the brakes are actually working. I'll just show you where or how they work a little bit now. So I've got the front brakes here. You push on or pull on this and it closes the front brakes. And if you find that your brakes either you can't pull on the cable, or you pull on the cable and it does nothing to the front brakes, then you've probably got an issue with how this cable here that goes all the way to the front brake handle, you've probably got an issue with that cable either being stuck, as I've put it deliberately here, or being out completely and coming out completely. So what you need to do is, you see this little kind of top hat shaped bit here, that needs to pop into the housing like so it's properly fixed in. It's not going to come out when you're cycling. And then try and push that rubber bit, if you have one, back on there. One more quick note is this magic liquid does loads of good things for your bike, but keep it away from your brakes. The brakes work on friction, and this reduces friction. If you put this anywhere near your brakes, then it's going to stop the brakes from working. So keep this away when you're spraying anything around this middle section. Try and spray away that way and not that way, because you might get some on the brakes, and that is not a good thing. And then at the back it's similar. If the brakes are not working, you've got exactly the same setup with the top hat bit. That just might be out of place and just might need popping. If I can do it one-handed, popping back in. Come on, like that. So popping back in like that, and then the rubber bit back over. It's not a huge problem if that rubber bit comes off while you're cycling. It's just a good idea, helps keep everything working for a bit longer. The other thing that you might need to do, if your brakes really aren't working and you've got everything in the right place, is you see this bit here. This is the brake cable, and if you loosen this bit with one of your tools, then you can either pull it through this way to make the brakes a bit tighter, or you can push it through that way if they're being too tight most of the time. Oh, I've just popped that back out. But that's slightly more advanced, and you may need to ask for some assistance. Right, and now we move down to the final part of the M, which is the wheel. So again, similar to the back wheel, we check around here for lubrication, and we check the tyre for pressure. So I'm just going to give a bit of a spray for there. Just a little spray there, keep that moving smoothly. And as you saw, there's a bit more play there than there is in my newly inflated back tyre. So we know this is also going to need a bit of re-inflation, but similar to the back tyre, I'm happy that there is quite a bit of pressure already in there, because it suggests that it hasn't got a puncture. So similar to the back tyre, I've taken the wheel and spun it round so this cap is closer to the ground. Just a quick note, some pumps have little pressure gauges to tell you exactly how much air you have in your tyres. And if you have one of those gauges but don't know how much air to put in your tyre, have a little look around the rim of the actual tyre, and you will come across some writing, some numbers that are either measured in kPa or kilopascals or bar, and they are units of pressure, and they tell you, so in this case, that I can have anywhere between 280 and 450 kilopascals of pressure, or 2.8 to 4.5 bars of pressure. So those are effectively the same numbers. They are just measured using different things like centigrade and Fahrenheit. So if you have a little pressure gauge, you can use that to go in between one of those two numbers, and now you have exactly the right number. So here I'm just going to take the cap off. This time I'm going to put this in my pocket so I don't have to find it again afterwards. Plug that in. And now let's pump. So this one was better than the rear tyre, but still needs a little bit of pumping. So I'm just going to do a few pumps here. Maybe a few more again. There we go. I think that's about right. And get the cap out of my pocket. And that's all done. Right. So there we have our fully checked bike, ready to go out on the road. Tyres all pumped, gears all lubricated, wheels all lubricated, brakes working, all good to go. In the next couple of days I'll show you how to fix a puncture if you've got one of those. And then the only bits beyond that to earn your badge are doing the safety stuff, doing a little poster or leaflet for the safety, and showing you can actually ride a bike for a bit. Nothing special, just getting on, riding a bit and hopping off.